Welcome to the Samson Strength Coach Collective podcast. I'm joined today by Alex Richard. I'm your host, Anthony Grasso. Alex Richard is the Director of Sport Performance at DME Academy in Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm assuming it's a little warmer down there than it is up here in Connecticut today. We're actually getting snow, even a little bit earlier than we had anticipated snow. So that's always cool. So just kind of give you a little brief background on Alex, bachelor's degree in health promotion and wellness from the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, master's degree in kinesiology and exercise science from the University of Southern Mississippi on Hattiesburg, certifications. You are a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA and a USA weightlifting level 1 sport performance coach. Am I correct on all those?
You are absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, now, we'll kind of allow you to go through and just take us through your story as to, where this whole thing started and kind of where it led to as you brought yourself to the point where you now are the Director of Sport Performance at DME Academy.
Yeah. Well, thanks first off, Ant, for having me on. Really excited to talk shop with you today. Thank you to Samson for giving me the chance to speak. When I first think about where it started, I think it's pretty typical for most strength coaches. But mine was I remember getting a weight set when I was 7th or 8th grade. It might have even been middle school PE, 7th grade. I think we did PE class and the PE teacher took us in the weight room. And this is a route I know a lot of strength coaches have. There's that just we love the feeling of lifting weights. Maybe it's our muscles burning. I don't know what it is, but I loved it from the first time I did a bench press. And that's usually the first love for a lot of males. And I think it was middle school PE. And then I encouraged my parents to get a weight set. I remember 7th, 8th grade. I was playing football and basketball at the time. Those were my two sports. But I remember, I was decently strong as a 7th or 8th grader. I remember messaging my buddy. I think it was MySpace Messenger because he had a weight set. He lived across the street. And we'd message each other. Oh, I benched 135 for 5 or 155 for 5, something like that. But I was, destined to be, kind of the more meathead type. And then through high school, obviously I went to a small school, River Valley High School in Spring Green, Wisconsin. We only had 500 kids, so small school. A lot of times the football coaches kind of ran the weight room or the PE staff, and they did a great job. Obviously, as we know, most high schools don't have access to a certified strength coach, but they were trying to pick and pull as much stuff as they could. Obviously, love that process. I'm not going to sit here and say it was great. Knowing what I know now, it wasn't perfectly structured or what I would do with a high school weight room, but they did their best. Very grateful for them, but love that process. I remember they even had the P90X videos. I would go in on my own and do those. So just kind of going through all those realms of fitness and lifting. I was a pretty good basketball player, pretty good football player. Basketball was really my main sport. Played the whole AAU scene and was fortunate enough to get a chance to play at Wisconsin Stevens Point, as you mentioned. That's where I got my undergrad. Division III is very unique in Wisconsin. I want to say that because a lot of people think Division III and they're oh, it's just, try hard. They're barely better than high school, but that is complete BS. If you are a Division III athlete in Wisconsin in the WIAC conference, which is the best Division III conference, I say that with confidence. And that's more just kind of a geographic region deal because Wisconsin has 4 Division I schools, I think 1 Division II school, and then it's a really good Division III conference. So at the time, Wisconsin Stevens Point, since the year 2000, is the only school that's won 4 national championships. I was fortunate to be part of one of them, which was the most recent one in 2015. We were really close my junior year. That was probably our best team we had. We had Division I kids transfer in. This is a public Division III school. So you had kids transfer in from Division I schools on scholarship. You get no scholarships at Division III. And again, that kind of feeds into that. It's a try hard level. You got to really love it. And it makes sense, you're going to maximize everything, right? That makes sense why those people become coaches. A lot of coaches are, people that played at smaller schools. But I want to emphasize, I was a good basketball player. I was on the best team in Division III basketball. There's 350 schools, and we won. My last game was in Salem, Virginia. We won the national championship. I was the leading scorer on that team. I got some buddies that'll probably be a little, salty about that. I wasn't I couldn't create for myself, but I was good at, finding a way to finish around the hoop. And we had really good guards on our team that were able to create for me. I would definitely 100% say I was not the most skilled player on our team. But I was pretty athletic and I was surrounded by good guards. So I did, I was our leading scorer, but phenomenal experience. And I think that's important as we touch on other topics. My perspective on that, I was part of a national championship team at the Division III level, which resources aren't even close at the Division III level compared to Division I. But, super thankful and grateful for Coach Bob Semling and Kent Dernbach, who is now the head coach at UW Lacrosse. They are phenomenal coaches. Some of the best coaches are at that lower level. And that's because they have less resources. That they think it's a crutch, but it's really actually not a crutch. It helps develop you in multiple areas. And we could touch on that with some of the resources Division I have. They almost have too many people. But loved, lifting weights all through college. I think as most strength coaches, we definitely did see an improvement in our athleticism from the weight room. I mean, we squeezed as much as we could out. I really saw myself, improve. I think it was like between my sophomore and junior year when I really found good athletic performance training, because Stevens Point, they had a strength coach, but he was kind of a football coach. So it wasn't really, we didn't have a structured strength program, which might have been a benefit actually looking back on it. But there was a local sports performance gym called NTS Athletic Development in town. And I started volunteering there and actually got hired on part-time. Kevin Ebel was kind of my first mentor in the field. He was, Olympic strength coach for I think there's a U.S. Olympic women's hockey team. And he had his own athletic performance gym in Stevens Point. So like I said, there wasn't really a structured strength department. So I kind of reached out when I had free time to go over there. And that was kind of my first in the field. When I finished up playing at Stevens Point, finished my undergrad, and I knew I wanted to be a college strength coach. So I followed kind of the classic route. Did an internship at the University of Wisconsin, Big Ten football. That was awesome. Did a summer internship there. June, I think it was June through, I stayed on a little later till September. Was fortunate enough to kind of get some good recommendations there for a GA position at Southern Miss. So I went down or moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I think it was June or July of 2016. I was a GA for 1 year, working football. Then I had men's and women's tennis, picked up women's soccer, I think after the first semester. And then fortunate enough, our men's basketball position opened at Southern Miss. And I think I was doing a pretty good job as a GA. And I was fortunate enough to kind of slide into that role and spent 4 years in charge of men's basketball and women's soccer were my main teams. Had a little small stint with women's basketball, a little bit with women's volleyball, but the main sports that I spent the most time as a college strength coach working with were men's basketball and women's soccer until actually this past May of 21. My fiance Ariel got a phenomenal opportunity in Daytona Beach, Florida. So we moved over here and I got really lucky. I got to be honest. I mean, DME Academy has been a gold mine for me. I think it's a perfect fit. It's a small prep school, 120 kids, which are pretty much all basketball players. We're trying to add other sports right now. We got 8 basketball teams, few soccer athletes, few baseball athletes, but high school level, we got an awesome facility, way better than I had at the Division I level. 2 full NBA size courts, weight room right next to it. We got 120 great kids. So I've been lucky enough to kind of slide into a director of sports performance role there, which I've been in since May. So that's a really long-winded intro, but wanted to touch on some important points because I'm sure we're going to get into it later, just kind of about my Division III background. But I wasn't just the Division III tryhard that wasn't any good. I think that's my little cockiness or brag. I at least won. There's a lot of guys, I played Division III, could have played. No, I actually won. My last game was walking off the court with a win. So that's my one little cocky brag I'll have. That's long-winded intro.
No, that's awesome. That's a great intro. And I think it's important. You outline a few very important things, obviously the resources and how they're different at different levels. And I think, a lot of what we're going to talk about today, it'll all make sense. I think the people listening, when they see what your experience has led to and kind of the lens that you look through now, based off of your experience at multiple levels, whether Division I, Division II, Division III, high school, whatever the case may be. So, no, I'm really glad. And we believe you now. We believe you that you were a Division III All-Star. I will make sure that everybody, the word is out and it's
blasted everywhere. Everybody needs to be reminded. It's been 6 years. I haven't had that, the good dopamine feeling. So blast that out again.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we're going to make sure that this is cemented in stone. So, again, that's awesome. And I think what I wanted to outline today, so obviously this will be a little bit more basketball oriented. Obviously, as you mentioned, at the school prep school, 120 kids, most of them are basketball players. And what I kind of wanted to also create as a theme before we get into everything for everybody listening is this whole idea of viewing physical preparation as that 5 to 10% lens when you are kind of going through and deciding preparation plans for team sport athletes, right? The physical realm, how much of an impact can that truly have on the sport outcomes for team sport athletes in comparison to weightlifting disciplines or, stopwatch sports, whatever the case is. Speaking specifically about team sport athletes, if you wouldn't mind, kind of take us through these 5 categories that you've come up with for the basketball program: the speed, power, strength, agility, and conditioning, and kind of take us through what do you mean when you say that physical preparation is, 5 to 10% for that team sport athlete, with the hopes, and I'll put this out there now and then I'll let you go. By the end of this conversation, we're going to try to provide the audience with some ways and some strategies to get to maybe 20 to 30%. So take us through those categories and kind of what you mean when you talk about this 5 to 10% lens.
Yep, absolutely. So, first off, the 5 to 10%, we're going to repeat that a lot. That's important to really distinguish and knock down right away, because that doesn't come out right away as an early strength coach. And it goes back to even when I was 7th, 8th grader. Like, there's definitely strength coaches, we have an emotional bias or tie, some type of connection to the weights, right? And we love it. It's our passion. So it's very easy when you start off as a strength coach to think that lifting weights for team sport athletes, we're talking basketball, soccer, let's throw football in there, let's throw volleyball, 4 team sports there. We really believe, that the weight room probably contributes more than it actually does. I think part of that is because you have that emotional tie. Like it's something that's ingrained in your DNA and you love it so much that we attract to this profession where we try to get others to love it that much. And it takes a while. I think first few years as a strength coach, you really don't see the 5 to 10% lens. And it really took me kind of, going to the divisional level and being surrounded by a lot of very gifted natural athletes. And they really didn't care about the weight room, and they didn't, they might not perform well in the weight room. Like, shoot me, I can, power clean 315, cool. Like, but they can't do that. And but they still, if I played them one-on-one, they'd destroy me. Like, so it's just, you start to see that, and then you get surrounded by good people. And I am the 100% truthful. I steal. I mean, as all good strength coaches do, we steal from other coaches. There's some really good coaches. I mean, Jump Science, Daniel Bach, Jake Tura. I mean, obviously Joel Smith, just like the Kyle Dobbs compound performance. I mean, I've learned so much just from the content those people post, and what that's what really molded me into this 5 to 10% lens is stealing the ideas from them, because they're brilliant concepts. And that's when I really started to develop in my head and zoom out and say, yeah, man, like the weight room, the strength conditioning side really is only 5 to 10% of the pie. If your goal is to win, a 5-on-5 basketball game, an 11v11 soccer game or football game, volleyball, is it 6 feet? I don't even know volleyball. I should know, but however many people are on the court. I mean, the goal is to win the game, right? So if you're going to have those conversations, and I would challenge anybody on this to think that the weight room, lifting weights with this strength coach figure, is more than 5 to 10% of that pie, I think you're crazy. Now, we could really get, dialed into individual differences. There's definitely some people, and this is obviously me too. I was kind of an underdeveloped athlete. There's definitely some people that are probably in maybe the 15 to 20% category of physical development could be the limiting factor for, them performing on the court. But on the flip side, and I have a few of these at DME, I mean, we got a kid that's a 46-inch vertical, trap bar 3 times his body weight. The physical side might be, I think he's maxed out. And whatever that means, I know that's kind of like a dicey area to talk about, but like maybe he should spend more of his pie doing extra skill work instead of lifting 3 times a week. Maybe he should only lift once a week. Like, so that, but then again, that's really tricky to, people talk about those concepts, but they usually aren't implementing that with 8 basketball teams at one time. Like, what are you going to have? Miles goes over there and does the skill work on the rest of the guys are lifting. Can you imagine being the strength coach? Like, well, why does he not have to lift? Like, that's very nuanced. So I think that's important to distinguish. Like, it's not like I'm saying that some athletes can't benefit, because and I've said this before, like if you have a 20-inch vertical and you're 160 pounds and you're really skilled, I do believe getting your trap bar stronger, your front squat, your bench press, exposed to max velocity sprinting, just a good progressive overload program, nothing complex there, can help you, and showing that we're trying to raise those outputs a little bit. And I think it starts with, obviously measuring outputs. I measure outputs I think most strength coaches, you have to measure outputs. Like, what are you going to do? Some people are against testing. I'm not against testing. Like, I of course do vertical jump with basketball. I do the NBA lane agility, the 3/4 court sprint. I trap bar them very frequently. We do bench press. Like, those are my main outputs because they paint a pretty clear picture. It's not always the perfect picture, but like, the guy that has really good scores on all those outputs is probably pretty physically developed. And now watching them play, you can kind of have those conversations of, does he need more technical work, or is it more physical? But that's really, trying to get into, that's the lens I see it through. So that's important, 5 to 10%. So when you're talking basketball players, even at Division I, I pretty much treated them like year-round basketball players. If you're in Division I basketball, May and August are generally the only months that they're not doing super structured work. But hoopers are going to play year-round. Like, the guys would go home for 3 weeks, but they're going to find runs in the local town. Like, they're going to keep playing 5-on-5. It's not like real basketball players don't just stop playing. So they're playing year-round, and that is an important piece to what shapes my 5 physical categories, which are the strength, the power, speed, conditioning, and agility. Because some people are really going to challenge me on the conditioning and agility, but like, I'll challenge them back. If you're playing basketball year round, I think the conditioning bucket is already overfilled and the agility bucket is overfilled. And I get some of the arguments about the agility, starting with clothes for early athletes. But I'm at the point where I just think it's complete garbage. Like, if they're playing basketball year round, that is the best, most specific agility. And conditioning, obviously, if you're playing basketball year round, that's the most specific conditioning. And the tricky part is sometimes you will get in situations where you work for a coach that's going to demand that. So you have to, kind of play the game. And we work at the college level, you work for sport coaches. Even at the high school level, I still work for an athletic director. I have an owner. They're a little bit not a little bit. They are way easier than the craziness at the college level. I'll just say that how it is. They aren't nearly as ridiculous with some of their stuff. So I really get to kind of dictate my realm. But yeah, those categories: the strength, the speed, and power. I'd say I really focus on those 3 the most with basketball players, because those are that's the year round. And to me, those are the 3 buckets that aren't filled for a basketball player. And like I said, this is my approach to high school, but I did the same approach with our Division I basketball players at Southern Miss. I really didn't tackle the agility and the conditioning bucket I wasn't very intense on those buckets. Let's just say it that way. But the strength bucket, obviously that's just a good, well-rounded program: squat, hinge, push, pull, carry. You got your core. I like breaking it down in categories. I think that's just kind of the strength coach in us. We like to categorize and box stuff, but that you have to have a framework of some foundation. And, you can start with those categories and then break it down from the most intense to the least intense. But one area I think I'm pretty solid, and I think good strength coaches are solid in this in the weight room, is having options within those categories. So if we're talking about the squat category, say a double leg squat, obviously we know we got front squat, back squat, you got a Hatfield squat. Like, I would even throw the single leg options in there: dumbbell rear foot elevated split squat, a safety bar reverse lunge, split squat. It's still the squat category. Like, let's not get too crazy with those details. And anybody who's worked with basketball, you're going to see a lot of different personalities. Different guys are going to orient to different exercises. Don't get caught up in all that. Sometimes you're going to have to, put your foot down and encourage them towards maybe a little better variation. But if an athlete has found a variation within that category that they enjoy, like, progress it, track it, progress it, encourage them to keep going up, and understand there's going to be waves day to day. These kids are playing basketball year round. They're not going to just be able to follow a blanket linear periodization scheme where, nope, you got to hit 4x5 at 80%. Like, that is just, I'm so done with that stuff, especially in season. And we could touch on that later. But the strength category, I think most strength coaches here, listening are going to have a pretty good grasp on that. The power, I really see power in the 3 lens. You got Olympic lifting, you got explosive medicine ball work, and you got jumping. With basketball players, the big caveat, they're playing basketball year round. So how much jumping? I love box jumps. Some people are, think they're wimpy, but they're just a great way to stimulate too. A great warm up for explosive athletes. Most basketball players are elastic anyways. Get their adrenaline and dopamine going, do box jumps. They're good jumpers. So you want to give them stuff that they're good at. I use lots of, obviously box jump variations in the off season, which to me, the true off season for basketball, the best time to really, train them is usually that March, April window, because they've just finished a long season. So I will be a little more aggressive in my plyometrics there, but never crazy volumes. that's just ridiculous. They're playing year round. And every time they finish playing, they're going to try working on a dunk and get the videos out. So like, why am I going to throw more in? But you're going to have to play the game, because basketball players, they want to work on their vertical. So therefore they think they need to do, Vertimax or just crazy jumping. So how you go about channeling those conversations, because I have athletes all the time, coach, can we just come in and do a jumping workout? And it's like, you got to, and I'm trying to get better at it. How do I take that, because they want to come get better, but try to, steer them towards the right direction. Because they want, at the end of the day, they want to get better. They want to improve the vertical, but sometimes it's not from jumping more. It's Johnny, you can trap bar 225 for 10 and you weigh 185. Like, I don't think you have much output. Like, you have a 3-cylinder engine. You need a V8 engine. So, that's one thing with the strength side, with the power side, explosive medicine ball. I think everybody knows that. That's pretty simple. Like, start with non-counter movement, progress to more, dynamic variations. And that's such an easy, like, I can have a kid that's never trained and teach them day one. I think that's where I really do choose my simple stuff. Like, if I'm going to do explosive medicine ball, you have to be the worst coach in the world if you can't teach someone to do that day one. Same with a trap bar deadlift and a bench press. Like, I'll fight some strength coaches on this. Like, they want to do as their output measures. Like, the trap bar is so easy to learn. Especially when you teach it a little squatty, like in a bench press, with a young athlete, it's so easy to learn day one. They can progress it and they're going to see results, which is going to help them, from a little buy-in standpoint in the weight room. The Olympic lifts, again, I like doing them personally, love them. I'm pretty good at them. I have not felt the need to use them. I think if we're doing, explosive medicine ball work and jumps, I think the power category is checked. Again, if I'm working with one-on-one with an athlete, I might feel differently. And I think it's like the rule of a third. If I got 15 basketball players and all right, guys, we're going to hang clean today. Hopefully I've taken them through a good block of front squats first, which blows my mind. Some strength coaches don't do front squats or overhead squats, and then they want to throw them into Olympic lifts, or just haven't established a foundation of vertical pressing or, pull-ups, and then they want to do overhead, jerks or push press. Establish some foundation first. But if I have 15 guys in there, 5 of them are going to be really good and see progress in the Olympic lifts. It's going to be good for them. 5 of them are going to be in between. I'm just going to be so locked in on coaching them. And 5 of them, you are wasting their time. And most strength coaches, I'm not the most patient person. So sometimes it's knowing yourself. I don't have a lot of patience for Olympic lifts. So I just know it's not a good choice for me as a strength coach working with basketball players. And again, we talked about do jumps, do explosive medicine ball work. And then the big one, I want to get better at this. I will be 100% honest. I haven't done a good enough job, is because I know the benefits of max velocity sprinting. And I think that is a untapped area in the basketball world. Most people would say, the court's only 94 feet, 31 yards. They're always in acceleration, but you don't do it because of that. It's from the global stimulus you and I know from max velocity sprinting. The Dasher laser system is $500 or $600, the most efficient system ever. So easy to set up. It's an app on my phone, and I can pile out output measures, give them, mile per hour measures. I want to do a better job of integrating that with our kids at DME. I did a little, but it wasn't my goal is to have it in year round, because right now I'm not doing any speed work with the guys. I was able to do a little bit of it in the off season, but it just wasn't what I liked. And I think some of it's logistically. Our courts are always being used. I do have maybe 15, 20 yards. They just don't have a long, a recovery zone if we do sprints in the weight room. It's tough to set up. And I'm a big believer, if you're going to do a speed day, you need to have a great warm up. You got to create the environment. So it's tough to fit that in if I'm jammed up with 8 teams lifting on one day, in hour blocks. But that's an area I want to tap into. If I was a basketball coach, and I think we've discussed this before, Anthony, I would keep one day of high intensity sprinting year round. And it would be the Tony Holler approach, rank, record, let that be that output, the number the guys are chasing. Maybe that's what some of my really athletic guys are lacking, because like I said, the guy I talked about is 46-inch vertical and, 3 times his body weight, trap bar deadlift, stupid numbers, just completely shredded. Maybe he needs to, maybe that's the one physical measure I can really help him improve on. But also, again, I still question that too when I say that. People that have specific answers for those really elite people, you just need to do this. Shut up. That's your emotional tie to the weight room and strength conditioning. They probably are just maxed out in physical, and they'd probably just be better off just playing their sport and spending all their time there. But I hope that helped, just kind of touch on those categories. Biggest thing, this is a basketball perspective. This would change, those 5 categories would change if I'm working with, soccer at the Division I level, lacrosse, or, volleyball. I might adjust some of those. But I'd say the theme is still going to be there the same, especially in the weight room. I mean, is anybody really changing their themes on that and the categories? I just don't think they are.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that you brought up the idea and the concept of, this flexibility in the weight room, right? Obviously you said if an athlete firmly believes in their mind that they're going to get a better stimulus or some sort of output increase from, say a hang clean, and you happen to be somebody who's not particularly does not favor the hang clean. Might just have them do it. Like what's the big deal? You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, like they believe in it. They believe that there's some sort of psychological and physical benefit to what's going on. So you probably get more out of it than them not doing, or them going ahead and trying to do the movement that you want them to do when they don't actually want to do it and they don't believe in it. So with that, I kind of wanted to lead into, next the idea of, you talked about, organizing stressors and what you'd like to do with these basketball players and how you kind of work with the coaches to, if in your ideal world, put them in a situation where you are organizing these stressors in maybe a high, low sequence. And the conversations you've had about, with sport coaches about wanting to do more speed work, just sort of for that global stimulus that you provide. I know you just touched on it a little bit, but what you're actually looking for when it comes to providing them exposure to sprinting, and kind of how you tie all that stuff in. You talk about being flexible with weights and flexible with the exercises, the auto regulation, right? Like kind of go into, as you move now into this world where you're trying to organize these things and come up with some of the concepts that you would then implement and sort of execute these categories. What does that look like for you specifically when it comes to, like I said, the sprinting and executing all of these particular biomotor abilities? The flexibility you have when it comes to weights, when to intervene, when not to intervene. Like, I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think starting off with the weights, you're just talking about the flexibility, I think you need to know, any strength coach would know what time of the season you're dealing with the athletes. If we're speaking in basketball language, I touched on this, but I think the best time to really, you're going to train physical development category the most is probably going to be the March, April time period. That's usually somewhat of a true off season. And I say that with quotes, off season for basketball, but generally the sport coaches are going to back off and maybe just do some small skill workouts, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, 3 to 4 times a week. And we're actually starting to have that conversation with some of the coaches at DME. And I'm really trying to, hash out in my mind. So I'm kind of just going to think out loud of what I'm planning to do this off season. I think that might help your listeners, just my thought process on our off season with basketball and how I might organize, some of our stressors. So all of our kids generally are going to finish their last game the last week in February. I think we might have one team that does a game, the first week in March, and then they're going to go on a little spring break. So basically the middle of March till essentially the end of April, early May, we might have a 6 to 8 week block, depending on when kids leave, of training. And in a perfect world, I struggle with the 4 times a week. I just don't think it's necessary, but we do need to keep the kid. We're a business, we're an academy. Like the kids, we can't give them too much free time. Like, as anybody knows this, a lot of times in college athletics, you just fill the kids' schedule with activities because you're just trying to keep them, set. Because obviously kids are kids, they're going to get into stuff. So that's part of the theme with, anybody knows that. Like, you're not just going to let a kid have, 1 hour weights, 1 hour of skills, and the rest of the day is a free for all. You got to give them structure. We're coaches. We got to provide structure for the kids. So we're kind of looking at a 4-day model, which would obviously be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And we were in a coaches meeting recently, and one of the coaches talked about, well, what day are we going to play 5-on-5? And boom, that's where I hopped up. Like, that's the day I want. I tried just, again, and this is tough, Ant, because I feel like I just blurted out because I was like, boom, capitalized on this. Like, that's the high stress day. Like, try to get them thinking that language. And I don't know if that is always efficient because, the way I see performance and, good strength coaches that are at a higher level see it. Like, we see these lenses of organizing stressors. Most sport coaches don't even think in that language at all. So they're in an elementary education of how they organize their week, which sadly, let's be honest, most sport coaches don't really have a plan. They just throw spaghetti at the wall and they show up at practice, and you can tell. And that's very easy to see. And then you got strength coaches that are super organized, trying to plan stressors. So maybe it isn't even efficient talking about that, just because we're in two different rooms. You got, someone's working on their PhD and someone's in elementary school. And like having conversations at this level, maybe it's just, we need to talk about, like, we got to try to bring the rooms to the same level. Otherwise we're never going to agree. But I try to capitalize on that moment and say, hey, that's the day I'm going to really get after them. Let's keep it to Friday. You guys are going to play 5-on-5. That's going to be my high stress day. So when I think basketball, high stress, my three favorite, most CNS taxing. So my true high day would be, a great speed warm up, 15, 20 minutes. Might do some, competitive, like spike ball. I call it spike box, something game like. Now, some days I'm going to do a rigid speed warm up, like a track warm up. You need to have days of that. I mean, it can't just always be fun and games, but when I feel like it's getting monotonous, I'm going to change. And because I really want to get adrenaline going, I want to achieve some sort of a flow state before I get them on the laser. And I'm hoping that, runs me 30 minutes with warm up and a few laser sprints. And then boom, we're into the weight room. I'm going to look for my 2 output exercises, which are trap bar and bench press. Probably going to do bench press first. We'll do trap bar second. And that would just be kind of a very classic APRE-ish, scheme. I mean, we do whatever. The kids have the charts on each rack. They work up to a weight, and then they're going to hit that for as many as possible. I love as many as possible sets in terms of the weight room and in terms of just trying to sell out and to try to beat your number. I have crazy numbers. I had a kid that did 355 for 22. And it's weird numbers, but I don't care. That's an output number. So then next week, Tristan, I put 365 down. You hit that for 22. Just keep incrementally loading. You're leveling up the stress. It doesn't have to be 5 reps or 3 reps. I literally am super vague with that. And I just try to level up because if in 4 weeks we keep leveling up that number and they're hitting the same reps, there's got to be some sort of adaptations or leveling up of the organism. And obviously that would be the goal with the sprinting too. So the laser sprints, bench press, and trap bar are going to be my 3 main high intensity. I would love to pair those on Friday. And then boom, they're either, on the court with the coaches doing lots of 5-on-5. So obviously that's a lot of intensity and volume. And we've married that in the same day. And then, the kids are going to get 8 hours of sleep, eat only fruits and vegetables on the weekend, right? No, they're going to go home for the weekend. But again, if we're talking about trying to, I think, do what's best for the kids, that is a pretty good theme to send them into the weekend. And, hopefully they just are kids and they recover and they come back somewhat fresh on Monday. So Friday would be my day. I'd like to get after them. We're talking Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I would use Monday as really that medium day. I'm not going to expose them to a ton of output work. I was thinking about this. That might be a day we're going to, maybe do more of a single leg variation in terms of a squatting, some back work. Obviously, as most strength coaches are going to do chin ups or pull ups with their athletes, some type of rowing activity. Try not to really smash them on that day. And I think a lot of coaches have arrived on that. Monday is not a good day to smash people. It's a day to kind of, in the high-low world, it's a great tempo day and get some, total body circuit, just basically you're keeping the stimulus at that medium level. And then hoping on Tuesday, because I know Wednesday's an off day, is going to be kind of that just a little bit notch below high intensity day. So on that day, I might do maybe more of a plyometric focus. In this time, which is April, March, April, I'm okay with chasing some type of goal-oriented jump. I really like, people rip on them with, it's hip flexion, the jumps over the stick. I have those soccer goals. That's what they are. They're soccer goals with poles, but I have 6-inch marks on each of them. So 60 inches at the top. And people get on these such nuanced debates about this stuff, but doesn't matter. The kids love it and they like competing on it. So you're getting an output. And the kids that all jumped over the 60-inch thing are all high verticals here. So shut up about your hip flexion. And you see these posts on Instagram, all these people look like robots jumping onto this perfect 24-inch box. I look at it as a problem solving activity. You set up a 60-inch object and it's a little plastic stick. So if they hit it, it just falls over. But I love being super vague. Coach, what do you want me to do? I don't just get over it. That's literally all you say, and let the athlete be an athlete and problem solve. And that's, to me, if you're going to do jumping, do goal-oriented jumping. I remember the classic football, everybody hands up on a cadence, whistle and go. That's just, I get the look of that. And I get if the football sport coach, wants to see that, but you're really not like, the goal should be output stuff. So like, okay, if Pedro hit 60 inches, which I had a few kids, next time we do that, and obviously I'm not doing this in season, well, we're going to go 62 inches. So I'm going to have to stack it up on plates. Like, you're trying to level up, right? Like what's the point of physical development? We're trying to level up the organism. So, I mean, I would choose maybe some type of goal oriented jumping. And then, I mean, maybe that's your day where you do, RDLs or I don't know, something different. I mean, just pick your categories. But to me, I think it's most important to give you the framework of my most intense day is going to be laser sprints, trap bar, and bench press. Those are my 3 output measures with basketball. My hope would be that on that day we're playing 5-on-5, because it sounds like the rest of the week on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, the coaches are going to do maybe an hour of skills with the guys. So I'm not as concerned, with how much volume I'm going to do in the weight room, because their volume is going to be pulled from the court a little bit. So I'm probably going to, seek a little bit higher volume early on. I mean, some basketball players can definitely benefit from some armor or hypertrophy. So I'm okay at this time of the year putting more, hypertrophy work in there, or volume, I guess would be just the simple word on that, because I know they're not getting as much stress from the court. But because obviously Friday, just laser sprints, trap bar, and bench, like that's that's intensity. There's not a lot of volume with that. I mean, on the trap bar, I might have them do 4 warm-up sets and then boom, teammates are around them. And I'm trying to get better at that too, the environment. I'm so impressed with coaches that are great at creating an environment. Because when a kid that just isn't confident picks up the trap bar and like all his teammates surround him, we've all seen it. Like he thinks he can only do 10 and he does like 42 or something. I mean, I had a girl, Sydney Shaw, she's committed to Auburn. She did 225 for like 41. And like most strength coaches would stop it, but like, I'm not stopping that. Like, it was amazing. Like she didn't even believe she could do 10, but like just that governor that our body keeps on us, right? Like we got to challenge that too. And I think that's where we can do a good job in the physical development. Like, because the governor wants to keep all your outputs low, right? Like, no, we got to toe that line and try to level up again. I keep saying level up, but that's what we need to do. But the time of the year you pick it. I'm doing that, a lot of that work in April and March and April. And then as we move into the summer, the kids are going to go away. But then the reason I don't do a lot of that in the preseason is because when the kids come back, we follow a normal school year. The kids are going to come back in September. The coaches are going to be on them because we know we got games in November. So the coaches wanted to go 4 days, and I'm glad. Again, I'm in a good situation where I can say, no, we're going 3 days. I really believe that's a good model with basketball. 3 days in your preseason, which is usually September and October. And then once November through March hits, it's only 2 days a week. And then boom, season finishes, then we'll go 4. So I think that's a good lens. I really do for basketball. You can insert your sports, but I'm really letting the sport, when the sport is most important, dictate how much physical development I do with them. So does that paint a good picture? Just kind of how we organize stressors. But the biggest thing is you got to pick baby conversations to have with the sport coaches. Like I think it'll be a win at DME if I can get all the coaches on board with doing 5-on-5 on Friday. And then the goal would be, each year try to create a bigger theme, like, it's Big Friday, or, whatever clever stuff you can do. But everybody knows that it's laser, it's trap bar, it's bench, and then guys are competing on the court. We're marrying. Let's get 1 day locked down. I mean, getting coaches to start organizing like a medium high, like that might be a little complicated. Let's tackle just one of those first from an organizing stressors, because strength coaches, we have a really good feel for that, planning high lows and all that. But also, let's address this concept, just because you're doing a phenomenal job planning high low in the weight room, that doesn't mean a lick, because you and I talked about this yesterday, like, if the sport coach practices for 3 hours, like who cares what your high-low scheme is in the weight room? Because you're the 5 to 10%. Like that is such a small bucket compared to what a long practice or a terrible skill sessions with sideline 17s and suicides because the guys weren't making shots. Like that's going to do way more harm. So is it worth spending that much time tracking all the tonnage and all this stuff you're doing in the weight room with this beautiful Excel spreadsheet? Like if your sport coach is doing crazy stuff, like that's when we talk to this. That's where you got to try to win him over. I mean, if you want your 5 to 10% role to grow, it starts with a relationship with the sport coach. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've done a beautiful job. But like that is a mountain to climb. And I think some strength coaches are starting to. You got to be a great people person first. But I think if we could maybe tackle the organizing stressors framework, get them just to think in the weekly format. Like, okay, this is my 5-on-5 day. This is my more skills and, ball handling. That's a low day. This is more my, 10 technical, like we're going to go over plays. Okay, well, like we know that's going to tax the CNS a little bit. So that might be a medium because we don't got the most intelligent basketball players. We got to do a lot of new sets and defenses and schemes. So I think if you can win that, you might raise up to maybe 15 or 20%. But I'm not going to sit here and say I've done it because that's not an easy mountain to climb right there.
Right. Yeah, for sure. If you could just kind of, those are all great thoughts. If you wouldn't mind just kind of briefly taking us back through that week and just, kind of identifying, what would happen on each of those days, just so we're clear. So like what you feel is high and what you feel is low. Cause essentially what we're talking about here is high, low CNS sequencing, right? Like we're trying to figure out ways to organize stretches within the week. So if that is the case, and we're going to use the old high-low model, which is a great model and one that I'm, a huge advocate for. What does that look like? So it's like, you're saying you got your 5-on-5, you have your skills sessions, right? You have your trap bar deadlift, your time sprints and all that kind of stuff. You can just briefly just kind of like touch on what would happen Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to kind of just bring that all full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cause I got sidetracked a little bit. So let's go back to the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. This is March and April off-season basketball. They're going to probably do skill sessions on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday with the coaches for an hour. Might be before weights, might be after. On Friday, the goal is that they're going to all play 5-on-5. So I'm picking Friday as my highest of high intensity. Tuesday and Friday will be my high days. I'm picking those days because I know Wednesday we're going to get them off in terms of no structured activity. Saturday and Sunday are no structured activity. So hoping that there's some sort of recovery, big quotes on that happens. The highest of high day was Friday. I'm going to do, some type of obviously great warm up, be flexible, game, something to get them going, get adrenaline rolling, laser sprints, or something timed. It can be an agility you can do. Curved. People are getting great with all that. Like, I love the variations. Holding a medicine ball, a chase, have someone behind you chase, like, phenomenal. You can't just 8 weeks in a row, just do a flying 10. Like that is so boring and rigid. And I want to get better. I'm a rigid person. I want to get better at being more creative. Like it's same, but different. We're still doing something timed output, but I'm just impressed with those coaches that can tweak that stuff and keep the same theme. Laser sprint, trap bar deadlift, and bench press. Those are my three. That's my highest of high days. My Tuesday, my second high day, I'm going to assume in a perfect world, I'd have the coaches do something. Maybe it's like 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. It's not full 5-on-5, but we're hoping that it's still a higher level stimulus. They're not doing individual breakdown. That would be the dream right there. In the weight room, I think that kind of comes fourth and fifth for me is either a front squat, which would be, front squat or back. And I say this, front squat, back squat, safety bar, split squat, Ruford elevated split squat, a squat, right? Some variation of a squat for, again, that kind of as many as possible theme, one hard set. I think an RDL would come really close on there. I love using the RDL as a strength exercise. Take it out of the rack. Of course, we're doing a flip grip. I'm looking for output here. I don't care about grip strength. I'm not going to train an RDL for grip strength. I think that's a dumb debate. Like, do other exercises for grip strength, unless you're going to do hang cleans, right? But it's such an easy exercise, and it's a true hinge. Like we're talking about a true hinge. I teach the trap bar very squatty, so the most strict hip hinge is an RDL, and it's phenomenal. It can be a great strength builder. Is it that far from a deadlift? Like if you're just starting from the top down, which is way less compressive on the spine. Anybody who's trained athletes knows that if you pick a straight bar off the ground, you're going to run into a lot more low back issues than if you do RDL. But still, also on that, you're going to run into low back issues whether you do trap bar and RDL and you push them. But how you handle that is a whole separate side conversation because that you're training, you're going to have some stress. So RDL and front squat or something in the squat family would be kind of my other really output. So basically, I got 4 weight room outputs I'm really looking at with my kids at DME. Something in the squat family, RDL, a bench press, and a trap bar. Obviously like a chin up variation, weighted chin up is going to come close. And then maybe a single leg would come in there. But my thing is you got to pick output stuff. I'm not going to pick, something like a goblet squat or something stupid. If I'm talking high days, I want something I can measure and track, and on each kid's little card, boom, we know that we're keeping good data on these kids because I want to show progress and the kids want to see progress. So pick, we have to sell ourselves to pick exercises that are going to be easy to progressively overload for a kid who's in puberty, which I think those 6 are. And elephant in the room, most basketball players, I'd say 90% of them can benefit from a good progressively overloaded plan. So hopefully that helps. That's Tuesday and Friday. Those are my high days in terms of outputs. Friday, obviously being a little bit higher on the high side, and then I'm really going back and forth on what I want to do on Monday and Thursday. And just being completely honest, that's going to be more accessories. That's going to maybe be a dumbbell bench, a one-arm press, a suitcase carry. Oh God, I said it, some core work. I mean, one thing I laughed at myself, and I kind of grew. My first entry into the field was like the Boyle, McGill, like the whole, core stabilization. Like, well, I do sit-ups with our athletes now. Like, I'm mad that I do a weighted sit-up. Like, I'm not against that. I want to try to get them to doing hanging knee tucks. Like, I am 100% in on doing direct core work, and I went away from that. Only did stabilization junk. Like, so a lot of that stuff is going to come in on Mondays and Thursdays, and that's more of I wouldn't say it's true low. It's more of a medium. I mean, I think the low really comes from, and even I struggle with tempos. Maybe I just wasn't implementing. I mean, low, a lot of people hear low and they think like super low intensity. There's definitely some work being done, some capacity work. So I think anything crawling, carrying, if I'm with the right athletes, we could get up. We have 5 echo bikes. If I really felt like they needed some extra work, in the soccer world, that's going to be my tempo days. When I trained women's soccer, those were tempo days. If I'm training them 4 days a week, they're going to run. I mean, a lot of the soccer girls I was with at Southern Miss didn't get enough playing in the off season, so I ran them. I mean, you're going to run a lot in the sport. You can't avoid it. But for basketball, that might mean bike. That might mean, dumbbell bench, some reverse lunges, something definitely lower on the output side. But those are going to be more my lower medium days. So Monday and Thursday would be my medium days, and then Tuesday and Friday high days. And again, we touched on the hardest part would be getting the coaches to really organize their, framework on that. And that's 100% more important than the weight room. See, we do such a good job organizing our weight room. Logical. I think anybody would agree that makes sense. You got 48 hours, 72 hours between high stress activities, but that's complete junk if the coaches just kill them for their 4 sessions. Like, who cares what you're doing? That's, you know what I mean? That's the lens. So hopefully that paints a clear picture. If you got anything I need to touch on, I can definitely go back through.
No, that was perfect. That's why I just wanted to kind of clarify how you kind of go throughout the week. And then the last thing you touched on is going to lead, kind of segue into my next point. The idea that obviously, regardless of what you're doing and how organized you are in the weight room, if that main stressor of obviously sport practice or whatever the case may be on the court, on the field, ice, whatever it is obviously taking up the bulk of the time, and that's where most of the load is coming from, then obviously there needs to be something considered when we're taking a look at the way the strength and conditioning as a department and as a field is evaluated. And the same would obviously work for sport coaches and, the sports medicine staff. And I don't, I'm not trying to, completely just bang on the system here, but I do think we're kind of working in a little bit of a fractured society. Well, let's be honest. I mean, it's completely fractured. I mean, I'm not going to, sit here and, beat around the bush. There's a situation, right, where, you come across, conversations, whether it be athletic directors or people who are obviously in charge of providing the system or the criteria for how people are going to get evaluated in our field. So based off of what you just said, right now, we kind of move into this world where we would want to kind of talk about, and you got to kind of go back and forth on this, but the, experiences that you had in the collegiate world, and obviously I've had some as well, and kind of the differences between that and obviously high school and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, when you really take a look at how we're evaluated as professionals, as, specialists, right? In my opinion, we're kind of just all movement coaches at the end of the day. And we need to figure out a way to kind of, just basically, we have like specific specializations when it comes to that movement, right? We try to like bucket them and categorize them. But at the end of the day, like everybody in the building is trying to get the athletes to move better, just, depending on the tools you're using, right? So if that is the case, I'll give a specific instance, right? When we talk about the evaluations, and a lot of evaluations will come from very vague categories like injuries and performance, right? And we've heard these a zillion times, right? Athletic directors, assistant ADs, whatever, they'll say like, we're evaluating the strength and conditioning staff off of, performance and outputs. And I don't even think they use the word outputs, but it's like performance and injuries, right? And so obviously injuries, that's a pretty deep hole to go down, and just using the word injury in itself is super vague, right? So to give an example, it's like, well, okay, say you are part of a football program that has a poor offensive line. This is the example I gave you yesterday, right? You have a running back who you've gone through all of your off-season training, and obviously they, feel that they are resilient and robust and prepared to play the sport, right? But every single time that running back gets tackled, he's not only getting tackled by one defender, he's getting tackled by 2 defenders, one who's going to lock him up and the other one who's going to have his way with him, right? And now this could be due to a bad offensive line, poor schemes, whatever the case, like whatever reasons you want to come up with as to why, like and that's the problem. Like the variables are all over the place, right? But that is a specific scenario. I said, well, okay, so say he rolls his ankle because every time he gets tackled, he's getting tackled by two defenders. How does that really work itself out in the space that we work in? So what is it now? Like, okay, well, he's got a high ankle, or, something happened to his knee. So now it's like, get him in the weight room. We got to do a zillion TKEs, like the example we talked about yesterday, right? It's like, okay, so now the strength and conditioning coach, like, you need to justify your compensation. So make sure you do more and more and more in order to prevent this from ever happening again. And then obviously your sports medicine staff. So we all view athletic training and just rehab and prehab as these really, low intensity outputs. But let's be honest, like stress is stress at some point or another. You do enough of anything, it's obviously going to, regardless of whether it's low mechanical or high mechanical, it's going to be stress, right? So I guess, when it comes back to is, you made a great point. I think it was a year ago or whatever, when we first talked, you talked about how strength and conditioning has pigeonholed itself into this really dark corner where we have basically told ourselves and told other people and marketed ourselves as the reason why injuries will not happen, or we can potentially even, reduce the impact. Right? You see, like over the years, instead of saying like we prevent injuries, it's like now we reduce the likelihood of injuries. And it's like, we try to create an environment where maybe they won't get injured as much, right? Like it just constantly changes because I think everyone's realizing that when you have a sport coach who's unorganized in what he does, and you're obviously the bulk of the load is coming from the practice that's taking place throughout the week. And then you have a strength coach or whatever the case may be. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to have this one department do things that are so unrelated to the sport. And yeah, we're going to rely on that as our reasons for injury protection once it comes, to that within the sport. So I think if you kind of just talk your thoughts about, what we've done as an industry by sort of pigeonholing ourselves and claiming that if you train with us, you won't get injured as much, right? Because now it's like anytime someone gets injured, it's like, well, it must be the strength and conditioning coach's fault, right? And as I just outlined, that's that one scenario about the running back rolling his ankle, whatever the case may be. There's a zillion of those examples, right? There's a zillion different rabbit holes that we can go down of things that have taken place, like on the court or on the field or whatever the case may be, that are due to some sort of technical breakdown, some sort of psychological effect, right? Like we get filtered all the way through, right? And I think, that's the other, and then the other side is this performance aspect. It's like, well, what are we classifying as performance? If it's solely just winning games, okay, but like I would imagine that I would hope that the minds at these levels would be able to have a deeper conversation, right? And the depth of conversation needed to actually truly assess, what classifies performance, right? What classifies increasing in outputs, and are these things actually transferable, relatable to anything that's taking place on the field? Because if that's not the case, and we're not having some sort of impact on that sport outcome, then I don't really know like where we fall in that performance category, right? So this is where like the 5 to 10%, I guess, to kind of like bring this all up as I pose this question to you, and I'll let you go. This 5 to 10%, we're trying to turn it into the 20 to 30 for our audience as we sort of round out this podcast. Talk about your thoughts on what strength and conditioning has done by pigeonholing itself. And then obviously what we can potentially do to get ourselves out of this 5 to 10% lens that you and I both agree would probably live in, and maybe into the more of that 20 to 30% range.
Yeah. First off, phenomenal point. I love the ankle analogy. And what I love about that is it's a complex problem and you're not providing a simple answer. And whenever we started pigeonholing ourselves, and I don't know who's the blame. I mean, there's obviously multiple factors that could play into that, but that was a really bad spot. And we've put ourselves in a bad spot because I've experienced it. I mean, I've gotten blamed for injuries. I've heard athletic trainers, these are people at Division I level. I've heard administrators, saying those same things you said, well, we're going to evaluate this new strength coach, based on how many injuries they have. I mean, it's almost like there's a comfort in a simple answer. And it goes back to they're in elementary school. And it sounds like we're arrogant pricks, but like we've understood performance on a higher level. Most strength coaches do. Like we see it better than the sport coach lens. Like we understand performance at more of a PhD level. Like they're down here in the simple answer world. And it's the same topic I've talked about with young strength coaches. When you're a young strength coach, you have a simple answer for complex problems. When I think you have a young education, elementary school, you think that you can just provide simple answers to complex problems. I mean, how many points did you just touch on that could lead to an ankle injury? And it's a level of education and understanding of a complex issue. And you want to just blame a strength coach. It's like, it's comforting. Like we can just, we'll just get rid of him. Like, that's his fault. And you touched on it yesterday with I think it says the CARA, calculated athlete related activities, like the CARA hours or like the logs that coaches have to fill out. Like how many hours they spend, a week. What is like, I think in basketball, it's the 20-hour work week. It's like me thinking in season, okay, I've been blamed for, our guys not being big enough, strong enough, whatever. Like, I've heard other strength. This is whatever. And we get it. They're under pressure. So sometimes they air it out on us. And I've heard plenty of stories of strength coaches being blamed for why our guys aren't reaction time or agility, which we've all pigeonholed ourselves in, because it's some guy comes in an interview all hyped up, wants the job, and he just says a bunch of stuff. And then the sport coaches and administrators start believing it. I think that's part of it. We've caused this ourselves, right? Because who's going to talk bad about themselves when they're in an interview? If you want the job, you're going to say stuff, and you probably will regret it on the back end. But if you break down like those care logs, like I'm thinking in-season Division I basketball, I mean, shoot, with me in season, I'm short, like maybe 230 to 45-minute weight sessions. So like you're looking at maybe an hour to hour 15 minutes. The other 18 hours on the log is tied up in practice. So let's do math. 1 divided by 20 versus 19 divided by 20. Which one is a larger percentage of the bucket? But again, maybe they don't even understand the whole general adaptation, the stress, maybe that's just like complex phenomena for them. Cause like, if you're using simple math, you can see like, wow, like that's way bigger. This one's way smaller. Like we should probably look at this area first. And that's the sport practice. So getting right to the point, if you believe you're in the 5 to 10% realm, which we do, you and I believe, and I think there's plenty of other strength coaches that do. There's other ones that don't. That's fine. They're lost. They'll get to the spot. I really believe they will. Like, I think part of it is once they remove their emotional bias to weights, like they realize that it's because you love it so much. Like, and it's helped your life so much. But if you're a natural, it really hasn't done a whole lot for you. So that's why they don't relate to you well. But this comes from a good spot. We want the best for the athletes. And that's why we're having a conversation like this. Like we want what's best for them. And we see performance in the physical realm, strength development, speed development, part of them is 5 to 10%. But we want to help the athletes. So we know their goal is to win a 5-on-5 basketball game. Let's use basketball. How do we, stake out more ground? We're in the 5 to 10% realm. Well, we got to stake out some more ground. And I touched on it. I think the number one way is that it starts with the relationship with the sport coach. And that's tricky. If they're in elementary school and you're in PhD school, like it's, how do you level it out? I wish that's a complex issue and I'm not going to provide a simple answer, but I think it starts with relationship and getting them to somewhat organized stressors. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to like break down, because most coaches are going to at least have a weekly breakdown, or their ops person is going to break down the weekly. I mean, think of like the breakdown in a football practice. I mean, I'm not a big understanding the divisional football practice, but like they had the periods, like it's super detailed and broken down. Like, can't we just, put that thing on the bottom, high day, low day? I mean, like simple, like the high, low, I love it. And I'm biased to it, but I'm telling you, like, high, low, or get out. Like that is the model that can work. Like I really believe it can work. Like that is where the gold is. And with basketball, the high, low, I mean, I could be wrong, but generally it was like 2 high intensity days a week, right? Is the general high, low model. I mean, I know you could 3 low, but like if I'm programming high model, I'm thinking 2 high days a week and maybe 2 low days, and the rest of the days are off. And it's basketball. You're playing 2 games a week, generally at the most intense, 2 conference games a week. Everybody wants to win conference games for basketball. So you're playing 2 games a week. You the conference play is going to start in January. Work backwards from January. So like, I don't think it's crazy to start these conversations with coaches, but it's difficult if you're a strength coach, because first off, you need to do a good job in your realm. I mean, you can't just be a terrible strength coach. Like, and I hope like people probably look at us, because we kind of challenge the field, and Jake, I was on a podcast with him, we challenge the field. They probably think we're just terrible strength coaches, but like, no BS, like come watch me. Like I can handle my stuff in the weight room, but like as other coaches, it's kind of easy. It's not that hard. Once you have a grasp of it, it's really easy. And when you see it through our lens, you don't like worry about dumb stuff like your fancy Excel spreadsheet or, crazy, periodization schemes, because you just see it through, like you're more comfortable and confident. You're not insecure and tight. But I think it starts with doing a good job in your realm, and then, obviously developing that relationship with the sport coach. But the ops, and you mentioned this to me, is it Fergus Conley's book that they talk about how important the ops position is? I haven't read it, but I think someone brought it up to me, like that is such an important position. It blew my mind. In Division I basketball, and football has it too. I mean, that position is critical. Like the organization, we need to try to get up into that realm. I think if we could somehow snag that second role, but first off, do a good job, stake out your area. You're good in the weight room. The kids relate to you. You're doing a good job there. Develop a relationship. Like, it can't happen fast. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, nobody listen to this. Just don't go up to your sport coach and start talking about weekly organization. Like, coach, you should put 5-on-5 in these days. And then the tricky part is you should really know the sport. It's easy for me. I played basketball. I was fortunate to be part of a program where we did do lots of 5-on-5, lots of full grid work. Like Coach Semlin and Coach Jeremiah didn't do at Stevens Point. We did not do a bunch of garbage. I think sport coaches get, into that realm where they're doing a bunch of garbage with those 19 hours a week. Like, how are you using those 19 hours? Is it to prepare for 5-on-5, or is it dribbling a basketball and throwing a tennis ball, or, doing some like crazy, like, I'm going to do 16 dribbles and then, break down 3 cones and shoot a jump shot. Like, what? Like, the goal is 5-on-5, and that's the kid's goal. So how do we begin to have these conversations and get to that level? Because we really want the best for the kids. You want it. I want it. Guys that see performance, we want what's best for the kids. And that, to me, is the elephant in the room, is better organization of practice, because that is the main stressor. 5-on-5 is what drives the bus for college basketball. That needs to be implemented in a very progressively overloaded format, which strength coaches can help the sport coach. They can guide them. But I'm be honest, I'm impatient. I just don't think it's, I don't know. I don't want to say that it can just happen. I feel like I just need to take the leap and try to start coaching a basketball team and then get my, like, it's easy to talk about it too. I mean, I don't want to be the guy that's sitting here saying I got all the answers. Like, this is complicated stuff, but
it is complicated.
I think more ground.
Yeah, I think the thing that's complicated. I was talking to one of my buddies, JD Melhorn at Georgia State, a couple of days ago, and he's like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Now we're kind of in an interesting spot too, because it's like as strength coaches, where some of us are sitting here talking about and kind of criticizing like people who think that like our role is outside of this 5 to 10% lens. And it's like, well, like you said, like in an interview, what are you going to say? It's like, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to basically increase, your resilience and robustness through 5 to 10% and, handle some output stuff. And then, and I guess, and he's like, but at the same time, we're also criticizing the industry and saying that we don't have, quality compensation and our work-life balance is terrible and all that kind of stuff. It's like, so it's like, which kind of like, be careful what you wish for. It's like, well, if you want to express these people, it's like, hey, listen, like guys, like don't be so like caught up in this stuff. Like we need to kind of move into a realm where we have a little bit more of an influence in organizing stress for practice, some of the main stressors. Right. But at the same time, it's like, you're also saying, yeah, but we want to get paid more and we want to be able to have a better life and a better work-life balance and all this stuff and just be treated better. But it's like, we're also saying that, again, like you're living in the 5-10% world. So it is a little bit challenging. I guess my combat to that was that I was like, well, yeah, let's get to a point then where we're actually providing more value then, you know what I mean? But it's, again, that probably can't happen until you're in a system where people realize what value can be provided, right? Like, how do you convince somebody that they have a problem or you have a solution to a problem they don't even know they have, right? Like that was kind of my big thing with like creating a market where it's like you have these or strength coaches who are working and serving like consultants to maybe even like high school, programs where it's like, hey, like we're going to come in, we're just going to kind of like talk to you guys about like better ways to like, create some synergy between your athletic trainers, your sport coaches and your strength coaches. And, some of the other people. And then so like, it's like, well, is there a market for that? Like who's paying for that? Because like, honestly, if I'm an athletic director at the high school level and I'm thinking to myself, like, what's this dude talking about? Like, why do we even need that? Like, what do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, we all think that this is like a glaring issue and it's so obvious, but let's be honest. Like, how many people actually really understand or like they don't know? You know what I mean? It's just like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think we even have that problem. And the worst part is, let's be honest, like, you could probably win. You could definitely win without all that stuff. I think that's the most dangerous part, right? Even at the highest level, especially at the highest level, right? Like, you get enough talent, it's like you can win in spite of anything. So, I think a lot of places have kind of come to, and that was kind of what hit me when I was, working in college. It's like, oh, so like all these things that like I care about and I think that we should actually utilize in order to turn some of these things around. It's like, the administration, not only do they not really see it as a problem or think that it's that important, they don't care because they know they don't need to care. They know that there are other quicker ways to get the victory that they're looking for. And I use the term victory in terms of like having a season-long success, maybe going to a bowl game or whatever the case may be. And there are some shortcuts that you can take along the way. And I mean, given the turnover and the demand from the sport, obviously of football and any other, these major sports, like, obviously you're going to take the shorter route, despite the integrity that it compromises along the way. So, not to go off on a, soapbox there, but we got, a couple minutes left. So if you got like any, final thoughts or anything like that, feel free. Obviously this is your deal here. And then at the end, if you want to just kind of give people, a little bit of access to like your Twitter, email, Instagram, like wherever they can find you, some of your stuff, whatever you want to plug, that would be the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll sum it up, from a training standpoint, we obviously, guys like you and I, see physical performance through the 5-10% lens. I think that's a great point how you touched on. We're passionate about taking out a stake in the sport coaching organization of practice, but how do you, it's a question I can pose everyone. How do you do that when the program's successful and they don't even see the problem? And I think I'm trying to it comes back to, we're maximizers. Most strength coaches were, played at lower levels. Most coaches played at lower levels. And I think this is just a theme of coaching, why we struggle to understand other athletes. And because every coach has issues with athletes, because coaches people that become coaches were usually maximizers, right? We maximized our talent. We squeezed the orange as much as we could. So that's just natural. As us strength coaches, we're squeezing the orange as much as we can. And they're going to look at us like we're crazy. We come in the room like, what are you talking about, Alex? Like, we just won a conference championship. And it's funny because we know it, the highest program, we don't need to call them out. I mean, they got Ferraris and they're putting the worst diesel fuel, like crude oil in there, and they're just still getting it done. Like, we know that's happening. And how, they're going to laugh, can you imagine, they just scoff if someone came in, who's this guy? You know how many titles I've won? And I think that's a really great point. That's the complexity of this. And again, we don't provide, I challenge young strength coaches, don't provide simple answers. I challenge athletic trainers, it's people in any realm, know when to intervene. And this is, you touched on this in the beginning, this topic of intervening, as strength coaches, as athletic trainers, as physios, as coaches, we all, have a duty, but I think growth in our profession is when when not to say anything. Sometimes what I quote, obviously the best coaching is not saying anything at all, when to intervene. When you're young as a strength coach or young as that, you have simple answers, and that's where you're so quick to intervene. And I just always challenge the thought in my head, do basketball players really need strength and conditioning? If you just have one coach that knows a little bit about PE, you touched on it, we're movers. We get so dialed into these, squat, safety bar, split squat. I'm guilty of it too. Look at my progression. It's on my Instagram. I have it all detailed out, where we love that stuff. But if it's just simple movement and calisthenics, that might get the job done, and then this is where the emotional bias is just hitting hard for those people listening. They're just no, we make an impact. But I think you got to be able to zoom out and just ask, question yourself. Sometimes the best challenge is question yourself, young strength coaches. Should I intervene? Am I providing simple answers to complex problems? Am I trying to get someone to love something that I love? How much do they need? Where can we provide value? And the value, I'm just at the point it's the most influence you have is the largest part of the pie, which is the sport coach. It's a pyramid, right? It's at the top. So either people like us need to just go off and get a high school team and start learning ourselves, or, you need to really grind and develop a relationship and just slowly start the education process. But you got to be warned, that's a very tricky, windy road. You don't want to step on people's toes because, like I said, if they're winning and they're successful, they're not going to listen to you. That's just the tradition fallacy. Well, we've always done it here. They're not going to listen to a new way. And it's understanding the perspective. We're just maximizers. Coaches in general, not even strength coaches, are maximizers. They're probably a try hard and they maximize their talent. They struggle at understanding people that don't maximize or that don't want to maximize. And again, it comes from a good spot. We're having this conversation because we want to maximize what's best for the kids. And I hope athletes, if they listen or they see us, we want what's best for them. We're literally just splitting hairs here. We're just can we do it a little bit better? But that's the competitive side. I know you're a competitor. I'm a freaking competitor. To this day, I want what's best for my athletes. And I know if I can stake out a little realm in the sport coach world, we can accomplish that. So I want to finish on that. I do want what's best for basketball players because I wanted that, you know what I mean? If I go back, I would want to have the best plan, right? When someone talks and it's really, you got to be a competitive person. If you're not competitive, then this isn't for you. But if I'm a basketball player back at Stevens Point in 2011, when I started, I would love to have someone come in and lay out this plan. This is the most efficient way. I don't want the 75% efficient way. I'm a detailed person. I want the best of the best way to get ready for 5-on-5 basketball. And if someone's going to present it to me, I want to do it. And as most athletes would say, I mean, who doesn't want to, if they want to win, they're going to want to take the path of least resistance. And that's what we're just splitting hairs about right here. And I think that's where our field needs to go. Like, get off the bilateral, unilateral, the categories, we're doing this loading scheme. Like, that one's stupid. Like, stop. Like, that's just, you're even splitting tinier hairs there. Like, let's start to tackle the realm. That's why I'm so grateful, guys like you and Jake, and there's people in our field. I mean, I'm missing a ton of them that are starting to challenge that realm and question, this like college strength conditioning. Like, this is goofy. Like, this isn't right, because we need more people to come out, because it's going to help the younger coaches. So really want to finish on that. But we want to help the kids, and we want what's best for them. We want the most efficient path. And that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So we'll end it on that. We're on a little over an hour, and that was awesome. I really appreciate it, Alex. Obviously, I appreciate you coming on here, taking the time to do this. Obviously, you're at prep school right now, and I know it's probably a super busy time, but these are really important facts, and are just I guess really important opinions that hopefully people will view as truthful, just us being honest. And obviously, it comes from a good place, like you said. We want the best for these athletes, and we do want to obviously there's a deep drive and a deep passion to see the world of sport performance get headed in the right direction. And right now I think there's and oftentimes it's a sort of like a roller coaster and sort of a mystery as to what direction it actually is heading in. But again, appreciate your time. If you want to just give people a place they can contact you or check you out, and then we'll wrap up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a big social. I'm on Instagram, Coach Alex Richard. I love talking with like-minded people. So, I mean, if you want to follow, send a message, I mean, you and I we're the same. We can talk about the stuff. We just get just engulfed in it. We can talk about it for hours. So if there's someone like-minded that wants to talk about these topics or present challenges, I love talking about performance. I mean, obviously I have a passion for it. So reach out. Like, I'm not I'll talk to anybody about this stuff. So that's the only place I am. But again, thanks for having me on, Ant. It was a great talk, and let's do it again.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Alex. That's it's the end of the podcast here. Thanks for your time, folks. I'll talk to you in a little bit, Alex.